The alien girl stepped through the shattered airlock, her long ears twitching as though they had a mind of their own, catching the faintest vibrations in the hollow corridors. Her boots made almost no sound on the metal grating, yet somewhere behind her, the subtle hiss of a graviton pulse suggested she was not as alone as she thought. She rolled her shoulders and muttered under her breath in a language humans would have mistaken for a sneeze, if humans ever got sneezes with musical undertones. Her mission was simple: retrieve the data core from the abandoned space station and leave before anyone realized she had been there. Yet, from the way the dim lights flickered, it seemed the station had a sense of humor, as if it enjoyed playing cat-and-mouse games with intruders. She paused at the junction of two hallways and extended her hand, activating a holographic map that hovered in midair, projecting lines of neon blue through the dusty atmosphere. She frowned, noting that one of the maintenance shafts had collapsed. "Great," she said, her voice carrying a hint of sarcasm. "I suppose the engineers were aliens too, or just very committed to inconveniencing me." Her ears twitched again, and for a moment she thought she heard someone breathing, human breathing, irregular, deliberate, faintly amused. "You know," came a voice from somewhere above her, dripping with a casual amusement that set her teeth on edge. "For someone with ears that could pick up a humming neutron star, you're not half bad at sneaking." She jumped, spinning on her heel, claws grazing the metal wall in frustration. "I swear, if you're a station ghost, I'm not in the mood for spectral small talk." A human soldier dropped lightly from a maintenance conduit above her, landing with more grace than should have been possible for someone his size. "Ghosts don't wear badges," he said, tapping the chest plate of his uniform with a mock salute. "But apparently I'm becoming your new favorite pastime." The alien girl narrowed her eyes, ears flicking back like irritated antennae. "I have a mission," she said. "Your amusement is irrelevant." "Fair enough," he replied, unfastening a small device that beeped in a deliberately theatrical way. "Then consider this a warm-up exercise. You can call it training, or humiliation, or both." He tossed a micro-grapple toward her, which she dodged with an acrobatic twist, landing upside down on a nearby catwalk. The soldier smirked, muttering something about gravitational awareness being underappreciated. She rolled her eyes, but a grudging smirk tugged at her lips. As they moved through the station, the alien girl laid traps with the precision of a seasoned hunter. Pressure plates that triggered harmless but noisy holograms, pulse mines that emitted flashes rather than explosions, and sticky nets that clung with a dramatic flair. Every trap was met with the soldier's sardonic commentary. "Ah, yes," he said, stepping carefully over a net, "the classic invisible sticky net, extremely terrifying if one enjoys being mildly inconvenienced." Despite the tension, the absurdity of their interaction crept in, lightening the mood. When she ducked through a low vent, he followed with a grunt, scraping his shoulder on a jagged edge. "Ow," he muttered, rubbing himself theatrically. "Do you give a medal for endurance in these conditions, or is sarcasm sufficient?" The alien girl stifled a laugh, her ears flicking in disbelief at her own amusement. She darted through the ventilation shafts with all the grace of a shadow, while he lumbered after her, occasionally losing balance in zero-gravity corridors and spinning like a clumsy top before catching hold of a handrail. The contrast between them was stark, her movements precise, fluid, almost hypnotic, his movements grounded, clumsy, but undeniably persistent. Eventually, she found herself in a vast chamber filled with broken machinery and flickering holographic consoles. The data core floated in a containment field at the center, humming with soft energy. As she approached, the soldier appeared behind her, leaning lazily against a support beam, hands in pockets. "Impressive," he said. "Really. You go to all this trouble for a glowing orb that, judging by its blinking lights, probably tells you the weather somewhere unpleasant." She turned sharply, hands ready to strike, and he raised his palms in mock surrender. "I'm just here for the banter," he said, "and maybe the minor thrill of almost catching you." She let out a huff, her tail, or rather, the subtle ridge along her spine that humans wouldn't have noticed, flicking with annoyance. I suppose you could have been doing anything else. Shopping, eating, playing holochess with your cat. Touché, he replied, but somehow I doubt cats play holochess. Maybe hollow checkers, less dramatic, more furry. The alien girl lunged, and the chase resumed, weaving through broken machinery, zero-gravity lifts and corridors that echoed with their footfalls and grunts. She launched herself over a malfunctioning conveyor belt, expecting him to flounder behind her, but he landed gracefully on a platform above, grinning. "Impressive acrobatics," he called down. "Ever considered joining a circus? Or is that too pedestrian for someone with ears like that?" Her ears twitched involuntarily, a mixture of irritation and amusement. "I hunt," she said. "Circuses don't need hunting." "Pity," he said, flipping down to meet her on the same level. "I would pay good credits to see you wrestle a holographic tiger while making sarcastic remarks." Their footsteps echoed in rhythm, a bizarre duet of predator and predator, each equally aware of the other's skill, yet each equally entertained by the absurdity of their own competence. And as the data core hummed between them, suspended in its containment field, the alien girl realized something she had not expected. Despite the hunt, despite the near misses, despite the jokes that grated against her warrior's focus, she was not entirely displeased by the human soldier's persistent presence. He crouched slightly, tilting his head in mock curiosity, and she could swear his grin widened. "So," he said, "we do this dance all day, or is there a point where you finally let me win and call it character development?" She stopped mid-leap, ears quivering, and for the first time allowed herself a small smirk. "We'll see who wins," she said, "but don't get your hopes up." He laughed, a sound that ricocheted off the metal walls and somehow, despite the danger, made her pulse quicken. Their game was far from over, and somewhere deep in the shadows of the station, both predator and hunter knew the other was not just clever, but dangerously, infuriatingly entertaining. The alien girl leapt from the catwalk, twisting midair to land softly on the rim of a zero-gravity shaft, her long ears catching faint air currents that shouldn't exist in a vacuum. The soldier hovered a few meters below, his boots magnetized to the side panel, arms crossed, as though waiting for her to make the next move. "You know," he said, voice echoing slightly in the hollow chamber, "for someone trained to navigate debris-strewn death traps, you're awfully fond of dramatic entrances." She shot him a look that could have cut through steel if steel had feelings. "I call it style. And you," she added, ears flicking with irritation, "call it whatever makes your awkward fall a little less humiliating." He grinned, leaning forward, and in a fluid motion detached a grappling hook from his belt. "Awkward, me? Never, just creatively challenged by zero-gravity physics. Very taxing." He fired the hook toward a nearby support beam, swinging effortlessly, landing a meter away with a faint thud that made her ears twitch. "See? Smooth. Practically balletic." She shook her head, muttering something in her native tongue that sounded like a string of musical insults. "You should be careful. I might actually enjoy catching you." "Oh, I have no doubt," he replied, voice dripping with mock fear. "And then what?" "We'd have to file a paperwork incident report. Galactic bureaucracy can be such a buzzkill." She ignored him, vaulting to a console suspended in midair, using it as a springboard to propel herself toward the maintenance tunnel. The lights flickered, casting long, jittering shadows that made the chase almost theatrical. He followed with a series of clumsy yet effective flips, narrowly avoiding floating tools and panels. Each time she glanced back, his grin widened, like a cat amused by a particularly determined mouse. "Seriously," he said, grabbing onto a dangling pipe mid-leap, "you should slow down. You're going to make me look bad in front of my superior officer. Or worse, my holopet, which judges my life choices ruthlessly." Her ears twitched involuntarily, and she suppressed a laugh. "If your holopet judges your choices, you have bigger problems than me." The chase carried them into a vast docking bay, where the station's gravity was flickering due to failing generators. She pushed off a wall, twisting midair to grab a floating crate. The soldier collided with it seconds later, sliding across the floor with an undignified grunt. He landed on his feet, brushing himself off, and gave her a mock bow. See. Still upright, talent, pure talent. She rolled her eyes, muttering under her breath, but her tail, or the subtle ridge along her spine, shifted with the tension of her suppressed amusement. She activated a pulse beacon that projected a series of holographic duplicates of herself, creating a dizzying illusion in the docking bay. Each echo moved slightly differently, confusing sensors and the human alike. "Very clever," he said, skidding to a stop, hands raised in mock surrender. "And here I thought I'd have a clean chase. Did anyone ever teach you subtlety, or is that too mainstream?" She darted through a narrow gap in the docking wall, only to find him waiting on the other side, leaning lazily against a console, arms crossed. "You know," he said, smirking, "I admire your dedication to theatrics, but have you considered, just once, dropping the drama and handing me a cup of space coffee? Much easier than this ballet of doom." Her ears twitched in disbelief. "Space coffee? You really are trying to annoy me now." "Merely offering alternatives," he said, spreading his arms as if presenting a menu of life choices. "Option A, chase forever. Option B, coffee. Option C, grudging mutual respect eventually." She lunged at him, their hands brushing as they grappled in midair, each trying to gain leverage. Sparks flew as her claws grazed the metallic wall, and his gauntleted hands met her shoulders, both suspended by the weak artificial gravity. The absurdity of their situation, the deadly stakes mixed with playful banter, made her chest tighten in an unfamiliar way. "You fight dirty," he said, twisting slightly to avoid her swing. "Or maybe I'm just spectacularly clumsy, one of the two." "You're certainly not graceful," she said, pushing off his chest to gain distance. "But I admit you're persistent. Annoyingly so." "Persistence is an art form," he said, landing on a nearby catwalk, tilting his head at her. "And annoyance, well, that's just seasoning, a dish best served over time." She arched a brow, ears flicking in disbelief. "You're ridiculous." "And yet," he added, voice low but still teasing, "you're still running, so clearly I'm effective." The chase escalated into the station's central core, a massive sphere of spinning energy conduits, each one pulsing with raw power. The air was charged, and the lights danced across her features, highlighting the sharp angles of her face, the glint in her eyes, and the way her long ears twitched like radar dishes. She leapt across conduits, the gaps between them widening as she tried to outmaneuver him, only to glance back and see him calculating, waiting, leaping in a surprisingly precise pattern that mirrored hers almost perfectly. "You know," he said mid-leap, arms flailing just enough to stay balanced, "this might be a bad time to admit I secretly enjoy this. Your hunting skills are mesmerizing." She growled softly, though a hint of amusement crept into her voice. "You really know how to ruin a chase with compliments." "Ah, but it's a two-way street," he said, landing lightly on a conduit beside her. "I have to keep morale high. It's not easy maintaining morale while dangling over a glowing energy core, you know." Their movements became a dangerous dance, each step, each leap carefully measured. Sparks flew when their momentum shifted too close to exposed energy conduits, yet neither seemed to care enough to stop. Somewhere between strategy and slapstick, they developed an unspoken rhythm, a connection born from sheer physical and mental engagement, each reading the other's next move almost instinctively. Finally, she made it to a floating platform where the data core hovered, pulsating with soft, white light. She reached out, fingers brushing its surface, only to hear the soldier's voice from below. "Careful. That thing is probably rigged to explode if someone touches it without, I don't know, a ceremonial dance, or maybe just a proper password. Do you have the password?" Her ears twitched in exasperation, but she couldn't hide a smile. "Do I look like I carry passwords on me? Try again, human." "Worth a shot," he said, floating up beside her now, hands held out in mock surrender. "I'd offer a negotiation, but somehow I doubt we're ready for tea and biscuits just yet." She glared, but the faint twitch of amusement at her lips betrayed her irritation. This hunt, this ridiculous, chaotic, exhilarating hunt was far from over. And yet, for the first time, she considered the possibility that this human soldier, clumsy, sarcastic, infuriating, was more than just an obstacle. They stood there, two hunters in a zero-gravity battlefield, each catching their breath, each silently calculating the next move, and each secretly enjoying the chaos that bound them together. And somewhere, deep in the hum of the station, both predator and hunter understood that the game had only just begun. The alien girl's long ears twitched as the door to the containment module hissed shut behind her. She spun on her heel, scanning the room with a predator's precision, but there was nowhere to run. The human soldier leaned casually against the far wall, arms crossed, his grin as irritatingly smug as ever. "Welcome to your temporary home," he said. "I call it the deluxe containment suite. No minibar, though. Tragic oversight, really." She crouched low, testing the magnetic field around her boots. The room was designed to neutralize her agility, but it wasn't enough to break her composure. "Deluxe," she said, ears flicking in disbelief. "It's a glorified metal box. You humans really do have a sense of humor." "And apparently you have a flair for understatement," he replied. "I almost expected you to insult it in 3 different tonal registers and a minor chord sequence." She narrowed her eyes, but even in confinement she couldn't help the faint twitch of amusement in her lips. She shifted to sit on a low bench, analyzing the containment system, calculating escape routes, examining weaknesses. Yet as her mind raced, she found herself stealing glances at him. He was unarmed, yet there was an undeniable tension in his posture, a readiness that made her wonder how many humans had tried to capture him and failed. "So," he said, leaning closer, "how's the view from the inside? Cozy, or should I add some extra padding for dramatic effect?" "You should add better jokes," she replied. "Your taste is terrible." "That," he said, grinning, "is why you're the alien with ears and I'm the human with charm. Balance in the universe. Cosmic harmony, that sort of thing." She shook her head, but her ears twitched in amusement. After hours of confinement, a subtle rhythm formed between them, teasing, sparring with words and small psychological maneuvers that felt like extensions of the hunt they had shared. "You're lucky," she muttered. "I don't get bored easily." "And yet," he said, tipping his head, "you're here. Boredom has been postponed." Time passed in a series of low-intensity tests. She tried to escape. He countered with a mix of technology and intuition, and every near failure was punctuated with sarcasm and a quip. The alien girl realized that in a strange way, the human's persistence forced her to consider alternatives, to rethink how she approached a challenge. She couldn't rely purely on speed or skill. She needed creativity, patience, subtlety. One evening, as the lights dimmed for the station's maintenance cycle, she sat cross-legged on the floor, ears flicking in the quiet hum of the module. He settled opposite her, legs stretched, looking unbothered despite the cramped space. "You know," he said, "I think we might actually make a decent team someday. I mean, if you stop trying to kill me first." She let out a dry laugh, the first in what felt like days. "Don't get ahead of yourself, human. You're not exactly my idea of an ally yet." "Minor detail," he said, shrugging. "We can work on it. Team-building exercises, trust falls in zero gravity, maybe a sarcastic debate tournament." Her ears twitched. "You do realize you're making yourself impossible to hate, right?" "Ah, but impossible to hate is different from mandatory fondness," he said. "It's a subtle, strategic victory." Over the next cycles, the alien girl shared fragments of her mission. The stakes, the factions involved, the secrets of the data core. In turn, the soldier offered small, carefully curated details of his own life, previous hunts, the quirks of his holopet, and the ridiculousness of bureaucratic galactic orders. Neither gave away everything, yet both revealed enough to build a fragile understanding, a foundation for trust that neither had expected to find. She began to notice how her perspective had shifted. The hunt had taught her control, precision, and patience, but this confinement taught her observation, analysis of subtle human behavior, and, unintentionally, the value of companionship, even with someone so insufferably charming. The soldier, in turn, found himself respecting her not merely for her skill, but for her intelligence, adaptability, and occasional willingness to laugh at the absurdity of their circumstances. Finally, the containment module opened, and she stepped out with a fluid grace that was hers alone, ears quivering in alertness. He followed at a cautious distance, hands relaxed but eyes attentive. The data core hovered in its containment field intact. "You know," he said, voice light, "I was half expecting to have to pry it from your claws. Impressive restraint on your part." She arched a brow. "I can be restrained when it serves my purposes." "Good," he said, stepping aside with a flourish. "Because your purposes apparently include dragging me into whatever mess you plan next." A small smile tugged at her lips, a mixture of amusement and reluctant respect. "Perhaps," she said. "Or perhaps I just wanted to see how long it would take for you to keep up." The corridors of the station were quiet now, punctuated only by the hum of machinery and the occasional flicker of neon light. They moved in tandem, a strange, mismatched pair, predator and soldier, hunter and hunted, yet bound by an unspoken rhythm forged in pursuit, conflict, and shared absurdity. When they reached the airlock, she paused, glancing back at him. "You know," she said, ears flicking, "you were not entirely useless." "I'll take that as high praise," he said, grinning. "And you were somewhat less terrifying than expected, mostly." She allowed herself a small laugh, the sound echoing down the corridors. "Mostly," she repeated, "don't push it." The data core hummed softly between them as they prepared to leave the station. And for the first time since her mission began, the alien girl felt a strange sense of completion. She had accomplished her objective, survived the hunt, and gained insight into human nature she hadn't anticipated. The soldier, equally, had learned that skill and persistence could coexist with wit and patience, and that a partner, even one from an entirely different species, could challenge and enrich him in unexpected ways. As the airlock doors opened to the starfield beyond, they stepped through together, moving into the unknown with a shared, unspoken understanding. The galaxy was vast, full of missions, dangers, and absurdities, but for the first time, the alien girl and the human soldier knew that whatever came next, they would face it together, cautious, clever, and slightly amused at the cosmic joke of it all. She flicked her ears once, and he smirked, and somewhere deep in the hum of the ship, a sense of closure settled over them. The hunt was over, the lessons learned, and though the universe remained